Hello and welcome to the history of the Metacrisis. Today I have the great pleasure of hosting a brilliant lady, Caroline Chubb Calderon. Caroline is the founder and CEO of Hello Humanity, an organization dedicated to reimagining and redeploying humanity in the age of machines. Her work focuses on the core skills needed to lead, work, live, and thrive in a future governed by artificial intelligence. She has spent her career helping clients, big players like Google, Microsoft, IBM, etc., push boundaries and vision the future and reimagine exceptional leadership. She passionately believes that in the age of AI, artificial intelligence, our only advantage is our human intelligence, and that we are in a moment in time that requires a much deeper and more intentional exploration of what that means. Her work focuses on advancing the unique qualities of human intelligence that set us apart from bots, droids, and artificial intelligence. And she speaks about the three I's: ingenuity, introspection, and inspiration, namely the underpinning of imaginative thinking, ethical decision-making, and visionary leadership. These are the core subjects that I want to discuss with her today. She fuses novel design thinking, neuroscience, mindfulness, and exponential leadership practices to enhance our human intelligence. Well, she has 3 degrees. She has her first degree on psychology from the Dartmouth College, and then she had 2 MBAs, the first in Australian Graduate School of Management, and the second at the University of Chicago, the Booth School of Business. So, welcome with me, Caroline Chubb Calderon. Caroline, welcome to the history of the Metacrisis.
Thank you so much, Alexandros. What an introduction. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Actually, you deserve it. This is your life journey, right? But I want you to tell us a little bit about it. Tell us a little bit about your past. Where are you based? And your core passions. What made you?
What made me? So first of all, I'm based just outside of New York City, in a lovely, amazing town called Maplewood, New Jersey. I recommend anyone come out here. It's just idyllic. And how did I begin? I guess if you could summarize my life, it's 3 chapters. The first chapter is working on large-scale change across multinationals, dealing with strategy implementation, like very complex, very, very challenging, multicultural, multinational change challenges. The second chapter is around how do we develop the kind of skills that we need across entire frontiers to be incredible innovators. And then the third chapter is around how do we help companies understand what's standing right around the corner that we cannot see clearly, and helping companies really understand the pulse and the emerging changes that are going to shape their industries and also shape the entire economy and society. And of course, in that, what's lurking that now everybody's talking about, but I've been talking about for years, is this incredible exponential growth around artificial intelligence and robotics, which are going to really challenge, and already are challenging, what it means to be human. Where do we play in this bigger scheme of life that includes transhumans, cyborgs, humans that are upscaled, and neo-humans, robots with artificial intelligence that pose as human beings, that are basically a brand new civilization. So the questions for me are, merging those 3 worlds, how do we achieve systemic change in our society in order to adapt to these new realities? Not only adapt, I would say flourish. Adapting is not sufficient for me. The second is, how do we lead in this incredibly powerful, both from a point of view of promise, but also of peril, this powerful moment, so that we innovate, not just for economic freedom, but also for societal up-leveling. And then how do we define what it means to be human? How do we really reorient to our human value in this new context that includes so much complexity?
Okay, that was a very insightful, a very synthesizing part of your life journey, synopsis of your life journey. But let me take you a step back.
Mhm.
I saw that you speak 5 languages, and
I do.
you've been all around the world. You live a nomadic life.
I
Uh,
do.
Take us through your courses,
See,
through the life stations that you were based in the past, in order for us to understand you a little bit.
I love that you asked this question. I just adore it. So I was born in Switzerland by a German mother and American father. The reason why I was born in Switzerland is because my mother didn't speak any Italian at the time. So she was looking for a German speaking doctor. The Italian portion comes because my family at the time was living in Italy, northern Italy, and they had just moved there. So my mother needed to find a place that she was comfortable to birth me. But I was raised in Italy. My entire childhood is um, Italian based. And I think some of that you'll find in what I'm talking to you about today, because the way of living, the way of relating, the way of being with one another is so different in Italy than it is in any other part of the world. It's more tender, it's more joyful, it's more united. So that really defined me. After Italy, I moved to Germany, France, the United States. I lived in the US for quite some time and then moved back to England, then moved to Australia, then moved back to the US. And now I've been in the US for a little while.
Well, you really like traveling, you really like changing, but change doesn't come so easy. It's a
Mm,
bit hard for people. I
mhm,
saw that you also deal with change management.
mhm,
How difficult it is for people to change and for
mhm.
companies to change, for big institutions, for big organizations, and for our societies.
Yeah, it's such an important question. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I had this conversation probably 15, 20 years ago where someone said, you've been doing this kind of large scale system wide change for years. Can you really point to the fact that you've made significant change happen? And, you know, I'd like to believe that the work that I've done has had an impact. But in reality, we are so stayed, we're so stuck in our ways. There is sort of a global inertia that kind of holds us steady into our steady state. That conversation kind of like woke me up, and I was thinking, all these techniques, all these ideas, all these strategies, all these systems of, large scale change don't work. Um, it's good for us because it helps us think that we are actualizing change, but they don't work. What I find actually works, um, I came into later in my life, and that really is about developing inner understanding on a global scale. So, inner knowledge, inner wisdom, inner work for outer change. So, my focus right now is how do we help people turn the attention not towards outer systems of change, but towards inner systems of change? And how do we affect mindset shifts? Um, because fundamentally, those are the only levers of change. And my work aligns with Donatella Meadows' work that showed that best lever of change is mindset shifts. And I think that's where we need to focus our attention is how do we do the inner work that we need in order to affect outer change?
And how do we do it?
Good question. So I think the first is we have to reckon with the state of where we are. I'm going to take us right into where we are with AI and robotics because that's really the context of this work. And I know the podcast is the history of the Metacrisis, so let's talk about this. Obviously, we're facing an inflection point in our civilization. We have these enormous challenges, enormously complex challenges, and we know them. Everybody rehearses them. We know them, right? The ecological collapse, our democratic institutions failing, the wars that are exploding in different parts of the world, our economic uncertainty, and our mental and physiological changes that are affecting everyone. This is what everybody calls a polycrisis, right? We name it. It's a nice bundle of an idea. It is important for us to tackle and confront. What I'm interested in, and I think that's why you're doing this podcast, is what is underlying all of those dynamics. What are the underlying dynamics that are affecting the polycrisis? And that's what you name, I name, Daniel Schmachtenberger names the metacrisis. So I'm interested in understanding, how do we shift the metacrisis? What is underlying that? And your question points to, what do we do? So the metacrisis is this nice terminology to address the fact that there's underlying dynamics that are unquestioned, unexplored, unchallenged, and they could be named in terms of human behavior, it could be systemic structures. Both of those things need to be addressed. But if I were to really shrink it down to individualism, to sort of like what an individual can do, I think the metacrisis exists in a few different layers. And if you'll indulge me, I'll tell you where my thinking is right now. I think the first layer is in right understanding. So how do we change? We need to get the right understanding of what's actually going on. And what I mean by that is, we are existing in an incredible moment of potential and peril. But if we just see it that way, we're missing the bigger picture. The bigger picture, in terms of what I mean by right understanding, is that ultimately, this is a chance for civilizational redesign. Many of us are thinking in incremental ideas of, this is a chance for us to capture as much market share as possible. AI is this incredible economic explosion. You and I both know it's a $1 trillion marketplace, at least by 2030. So everyone is grabbing for this economic treasure. What we're failing to think about is, what does this technology allow us to do in terms of creating a completely new way of life, a completely new civilizational pact? And I think what we need to look at is being more daring in those visions. So right understanding is the first question, right? Like, can we understand what this moment really represents, and not just be implicit co-journeyers, but actually active participants in shaping that future. The second, I will say, is that contributes to the metacrisis and why we are here and what we could actually shift in order to change our agency, is what I'll call re-embodying. So what's happened, at least what I can see, is there's a collective numbing going on, because there's so much complexity, there's so much challenge, there's so much doomsdayism around, that we are just bracing, right? Like, there's so many of us just bracing. And I will say numbing is an appropriate response based on all the onslaught of information coming to us, based on all the challenges that are happening to us. But numbing isn't going to allow us to affect and be participants in this civilizational future that I'm talking about, right? So re-embodying, becoming re-embodied, so that we are alive to this moment, becomes important. And so I think, in terms of what can you do individually to change, it's about rekindling your agency. And you do that by figuring out what gives you livelihood, aliveness. And you have to think on a micro scale, because it's the micro things that matter. So, for example, what brings you aliveness? Alexandros, can you think of anything?
Well, yes, of course. I can think of my dog, my olive trees, nature in general. I'm a nature guy. I love
Excellent.
hiking, I love swimming, I love running. So I'm pretty much grounded.
So this groundedness, this effort that you make to be grounded, to be in relationship with nature, that is essential. And right now, at least in the Western world, we have moved away from all of that. We have prioritized our meaning, our purpose making in job making, and it's taken us off kilter, and we are, unembodied, disembodied. What we need to do is re-embody. We need to come back to the things that bring us aliveness, because it grounds us, it stabilizes us, and from that stability, then we can think clearly about what the next generation of civilization looks like, right? We can think with a more balanced view.
let me make a pause here. Is it possible what we are proposing right now in mega cities like New York, like Peking, like, I don't know, big cities? Because yes, for me here in Greece right now, in Patras, where I have my village in 10 kilometers from here, I can go running there.
Yes.
And I love it. But for people living, I don't know, downtown New York or Chicago, how can they do it?
First of all, behind that question is the question of what generates aliveness for different people. It's not the same answer across
Of
the board.
course.
So let's just say that in terms of connection to nature, it's vital. And it's vital from a multitude of perspectives. Not only is it healthy, but for me, the vital part in terms of right understanding is also understanding that we're infinitely interconnected with each other and with all living and non-living elements in the world, in the cosmos. So without that relationship to nature, we're divorced from a larger understanding that helps us design a civilization that is in harmony with flourishing of all living and non-living things. So bottom line, I believe nature is essential. And we need to redesign it into our cosmopolitan cities. And there's a lot of work being done here. There's a lot of architects, civil planners, and even governments that are understanding the importance of this relational ecology that needs to exist between human beings and the nature around them. So I have a lot of hope that as cities evolve, that we are going to continue to design buildings and environments that incorporate natural elements and nature within it. And then, of course, what we're not talking about is the fact that I think the way that AI and robotics are going, the nature of cities is going to change. We're not going to need to be coalesced in cities as much. I think we're going to look at a very distributed societal organism where we're more nodular, smaller nodules in more distributed. So that's where I think we're going to go.
Psychological drivers of change and of human understanding. Well, Viktor Frankl foresaw it since the 70s, 60s, 70s, when he was speaking that the search for meaning in the artificial environments of our megacities is actually the very issue of the day, back in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And I see that we have lost this search of meaning, this battle against the meaning. How do you believe that young people, especially today, that they are the most threatened of the metacrisis? They will pay the heaviest price. They didn't have a say in the whole equation, in our doing, in our generation, and the past generation doing. And right now they have really degrounded base to find the meaning, a purpose in their life. Because right now we cannot even promise them to have a job in the future. Right now we are entering a phase where artificial intelligence and the machines might do all the work in the future. So what are you doing with a society that has no purpose? Because job was an essential thing for the last couple of centuries, not before. Before we were doing work, which is quite different from job. When you do work, you see the end result of your workings. When you are a farmer, you see the plants growing or the cattle giving birth. But when you do a job, when you are a cog in the machine of the industrial civilization, you don't see the end product of your workings. So the purpose and the meaning is getting lost in the process. Right now, we are also taking jobs away from people. We are not sure what the future society is going to do in all the free time that is going to have in her hands and how they're going to pay for it.
Okay, so To answer your question, first of all, thank you for that question because it hits at the heart of why everybody's so scared. But I honestly believe that innovating from fear is a reductive form of innovation. I believe what we need right now is an enormous amount of optimism. Optimism, not, I'm not trying to be Pollyanna. What I'm trying to say is optimism rooted in realism. And the reason why we need that is because optimism embodies a sense of mind that says solutions are possible. Okay, so first place of meaning is let's have optimism about what human meaning can be in the future. The second place about meaning is, and I'll say this, a lot of my clients ask me, what's the future work? What's the future work? What's the future work? And I'll say it's not the future work, it's the future of meaning. We can't think of jobs as human jobs anymore. If you really draw it out 30 years from now, human worth is not in the productivity. That's an industrial age mindset. We are shifting once again. So let me back up a second. And these, I apologize if these concepts seems non-congruent, but they all fit in a larger picture. So we know that this is a non-linear moment in time, right? We know that we are entering a completely new age for the human species. It's the same as when we move from the agrarian age to the industrial age, right? We went from growing food to making machines. Now we're going from making machines to question mark. What's the X? What's the new thing? If we stay with industrial age ideas of the worth of a human being is in its productivity, I feel that we have failed dramatically in capturing the true potential of this moment. The true potential of this moment is what a lot of economists have always dreamt about, which is the release and the freedom of human beings from the job wheel, right? Like right now, you and I both have to work in order to pay for, our mortgage, in order to pay for our lives, in order to pay for our food. Why is that a construct? We need to challenge that construct. So, for example, in a future where we have vertical farming, we already have vertical farming, food can be perfectly distributed, perfectly understood in terms of needs and supplies and demands, and delivered to communities so that communities are supported and well fed in that environment, right? If we have robots and machines that can outperform human beings on all the cognitive dimensions that we have historically valued about human value, then we need to think about, okay, what is the value of a human being that is outside of the cognitive dimension? And that is profoundly relational. There's elements of human biology that cannot be encoded in the machine. And there's also elements of human needs that we cannot simply meet by a synthetic machine. So what do I mean by that? For example, the embodied feelings of being in love, being in wonder, being in relation with each other. We can't, those are called qualia. We can't engineer those into machines. Machines can't feel those. Without those feelings, they can't actually have a relational dynamic with us, okay? The second is we need relational ecology. We need that feeling of being heard, understood, seen, and we need that invisible interaction of pheromones and whatnot that we don't even understand yet, right? We need that. Machines can't provide that. I spoke about it a bit in my TED Talk. You can't synthetically create a machine that would be a life companion because it will miss all of that qualia-ness that we need in order to fully feel enlivened.
Let me make a pause here because right now we see artificial personalities, artificial girlfriends and boyfriends.
Yes.
And they are getting sold by the millions every day. So when we say that we need them, yes, I totally agree with you, but I wonder if we project the needs of our generation, of past generation, or if we are actually speaking about everyday humans nowadays, every young person, because we see that they opt not to have real connections,
Mm-hmm.
but to get connected with machines without qualia, without pheromones, without adrenaline running in their veins.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me finish answering the question about the future of meaning, and then I'll answer this question because it's really important. So, if I were to speak to any young person today that's feeling defeated and dejected, the first thing I would say is nurture your optimism. The second thing I would say, the future of your purpose is not in your productivity. The third thing I would say is, if we are to reimagine a civilization the way that we can right now because of these technological possibilities, we need to imagine a world beyond industrial thinking. That means that we can create societies that are self-nurturing, self-providing, and therefore liberating for human beings. We need to liberate human beings from the job wheel that keeps us trapped into producing. How do we do that? UBI is idea on the table. We need to work on that and see if we can make it work. Tokenism is other ideas on the table. Like, can we transition capitalism into tokenism, some type of economy of service, economy of care? And then we have to think about, how do we ensure that human beings don't just become passive recipients of all these goods, but remain active participants in creating a greater good for society? And that's where I think the education comes in, right? Like educating on humanist values, educating on why we need care and relationship with each other. Without that experience of relational, and now I'm going to transition to your second question. Without that experience of what it means to be in good relation with another, of course, we're going to opt for synthetic option that comes close, but is not all. So part of the challenge for us is to reorient, invest in what it means to be human and the value of being human together. We have $1.3 trillion market opportunity in AI. What are we investing in skilling humanity? We're not, and we must, because otherwise we're going to end up having a psychotic society. All the doomsday scenarios are going to happen simply because the synthetic is more appealing than the real, right? So back to the question about why we have synthetic companions, synthetic participants, so on. Part of it is because they meet a need that is not being met. So how do we meet that need in a way that is a little bit more wholesome and more holistic? Now, let me just say, there's also a question about, well, could human beings learn to be more human with machines? I don't know if you ever ask yourself that question, but I wonder about that quite a bit. And my thinking is, yes, we might meet a sort of a level of understanding of how to relate to each other from a machine, but it's shallow. There's something really amiss. I was talking about this in a separate context with someone yesterday. I was thinking about, how much of our lives have been turned into letters and words. Like all of our human knowledge has now been turned into letters and words. And how much of our time is now dedicated to reading those letters and words and technology that can read it to us and so on. In reading the letters and words, what we're losing is what you and I are having right now, which is a relationship. And what we're losing is the intonation of my voice. And what we're losing is the presence that I'm bringing and your presence and the smile that's coming through your eyes. And we need to understand that is patrimony. That is a human patrimony that we have to protect and become multidimensional again, as opposed to single dimensional, which is reading from a screen. So that applies to relationships as well. Yes, we can have AI companions, but that's a singular dimension of experience. We need multiple dimension of experience, and that we need to reinvest in and revalue and reorganize around.
I believe that we don't only lose, we also win a lot from the machines. I believe that we have learned a lot about ourselves, because if you are looking through the history, well, in the past, through philosophy, we made educated guesses about ourselves. While creating an artificial intelligence, we delved into ourselves when we understand, we really understood, we grasped what intelligence is all about. Creating something makes you have insights that you wouldn't have while you were speculating about the thing.
100%.
So I believe that artificial intelligence made us understand better the human intelligence. So walk me through a little bit through the difference of artificial and human intelligence. What are the main differences, similarities, even likeness?
Let me also say this idea that you just had about we discover more about ourselves in the making of something else is exactly what we need to do in order to create the civilization that we want. Okay, so what we're doing right now is we're lifting and shifting the idea of industrialism and sort of capitalistic economy and applying it to an artificial world. That is not innovating. That is lifting and shifting. What we need is a whole multitude of various experiments and prototypes of what that future would look like. Because without that prototype, without that experiment, we don't even know what we know and what we don't know, where we want to go, where we don't want to go. We need that in terms of self-evolution. So let me just caveat with that. Your question about the difference between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. So first of all, we need to understand that artificial intelligence is based on a corpus of human intelligence, right? The knowledge that has been encoded in the words and the videos and everything that we put online. And it brilliantly pulls information from all sides of the universe to create something that feels genuine and human and novel. But it's not novel in itself because it is retroactive. It looks at what has been created. It doesn't create anew. So what we need to understand is that artificial intelligence is it's like a mixer of ideas. In that way, it's novel. But what it doesn't do is ask the kinds of questions of what it is that we need to create and why we need to create those things. And what is the worthiness, the value, and the wisdom that needs to guide those questions. That is a human intelligence that we can't deploy to machines. We have to maintain the human value. I found out a few years ago, and this is completely mixing two things, but just indulge me for a minute. So I was wondering, so first of all, did you know that the root for crisis is sifting? The word crisis actually means sifting. So for me, metacrisis is understanding what is beneath the surface and how do we sift what we really need and want.
Crisis actually comes from the Greek word krino, which means to judge, to put yourself in front of a decision, to grasp the realities and make a decision, to be the judge.
To be the judge, which means that you're deciding what needs to be in and what needs to be out. So our two definitions merge. The second definition, and this is completely non-linear, and so indulge me, it's entirely made up. But the word humanity is made of three parts: hum, ma, and niti. And if you look up the words hum, ma, and niti in Sanskrit, hum means ethics. Sorry, hum means wisdom, ma means ethics, and niti means prudence. So in that context, what is human intelligence? It's wisdom, ethics, and prudence. That is humanity's worth. And we need to reorient and make sure that we're really investing in how do we develop wisdom? How do we shape ethics? How do we show prudence? That is human intelligence. Artificial intelligence will be able to help us unlock an enormous amount of knowledge and help us propel our ideas into the future. But the way that we do it, the meaning behind it, the value of it, the worthiness of those pursuits, those come from human intelligence.
So actually, human intelligence is what is beyond information processing, because artificial intelligence is information processing for which the machines must be maybe much more efficient and much more fast than we are. They work in milliseconds and in milliseconds, while we work in human hours. It takes an enormous amount of energy to process information for our brains. Our brains are a very costly instrument. It costs us around 20% of our budget, energy budget daily. So this is something that doesn't come cheap for the human biology. But it may become very cheap through the machines. And we can take advantage of the machines in information processing. But right now, we're entering a realm where a lot of people think that the machines are also becoming conscient, that they start developing consciousness. What is more than intelligence? And there you have these Moloch traps, bipolar traps, binary traps, whatever you want to call them, multipolar traps, where you are entering the realm of exponential dangers, extinction events. You have a lot of institutions talking about it. You have a lot of scientists talking about it, being afraid of it. I understand what you are saying, that fear should not be our primary driver. But fear and optimism, I believe we are in a position that we should grab them and hold them at the same time in our hands and in our minds. Because they are the drivers behind the evolution of the machine right now, which is coming really fast. And it is unprecedented for our history. We don't know how to handle it, I believe.
It is one of these tensions, right? The exponential growth of the machine and the biological demand of a human being. And can we act fast enough, quickly enough, in order to merge or maintain or care for or make sure that we address this bigger existential question that we have? That is the ultimate question. There are only two answers to that. The first is throttle. Somehow we need to throttling AI development so that we can catch up and create some type of guardrails around it. A lot of investors, a lot of AI optimists don't like that answer because they feel that you're undermining innovation and evolution. They also will give you the argument that AI could help us solve some of the climate crisis issues, and therefore we have to go as fast as we can. I think that is a partial answer. I think we do need to throttle somehow. And one of the things that I talk about in a lot of my speeches is the need for courageous growth, like courage right now. And what I mean by that is courage is, number one, the courage to stand up to this economic system that drives profit above all else, and actually the courage to put forward this idea that we are fundamentally interconnected in symbiosis with the environment, and we need to think about systemic ideas of flourishing that include human, non-human, and planetary flourishing. Courage to stand up and say, we need to sacrifice our own profits in service of human, not more than human, and planetary flourishing. Courage to question our own assumptions about what it means to be successful in this moment. Success is not a number. Success is not a bottom line number. Success in this moment is metrics of relational health, mental health, ecological health, community flourishing, community vitality, societal flourishing, ecological well-being. We need to look at all of those metrics of health and more that we haven't even identified yet. So we need courage. And I do, by the way, the reason why I talk about courage because this is so fundamental. And I also am certified by Dr. Brene Brown, who is the world's expert in courage. the reason why I did that is because we need to understand how to deal with the unease of being the outsider in a system, the superorganism, as Nate Higgins talks about, in a superorganism that kind of drives us in one direction, like the unease of being like the person who stands up to that wave, and the unease of potentially feeling shame, vulnerability, you know, uh, being a part of the out group. We need to learn to deal with that unease in order for us to be actual agents in this moment. So a lot of what we need to do is come back to courage.
Do you believe that our political system can find this kind of courage that you're talking about? Because right now you're having an election in the
Mm-hmm.
US.
Mm-hmm.
You have candidates running.
Mm-hmm.
Who is talking about this stuff that we are
No
talking
one
today?
is. No one is. That's so. I will. You told me you introduced the three eyes that I talk about in terms of human intelligence. There's also four eyes that keep us away. So the four eyes are this incrementalist mindset, this belief that we can lift and shift, that somehow incremental ideas and solutions are going to solve it. It's not. The second eye is inertia, this kind of sense of, I can't make it happen by myself. I don't have the power. I'm only an individual setting up to the system. And there, again, I'll say you have to rekindle your power, do everything you can to regenerate, because we have to send up to the system. The next inertia is incentives. All of our incentives are aligned around growth and profitability, and even individually, just feeling socially superior to other people. It's such a driver and incentive. We're so incentivized for that. And the next is to protect incumbency protection. That's the next I, is like to protect what we've already built, and the desire not to let it go. Those four eyes are standing in diametrical opposition to what it is that we actually need to do. So I would love to see us challenge each of those eyes. One of the things that I talk about in terms of leading in this moment, leading in this age, is we need three new skills. Moral imagination, which is this dramatic imagination for the future that is not incremental, it's disruptive. So moral imagination, what our life could look like in a post-industrial, post-capitalist age. The second is ethical stewardship, which is this idea of you are now a steward of not just your profits, but actually all of humanity, all of the planet, and all living beings on it. And the third is this courageous growth that I'm just talking about. You have to cultivate those courage muscles in order for us to actually make the future that we all think is possible. So those are the three key skills of leadership. And then the three eyes that you talked about earlier are the human intelligence skills that we need. So introspection is kind of the inner work that I was talking to you about. What do we need to enhance the quality of our attention and the directiveness of our attention so that we can come up with the right solutions? And for me, that means cultivating mindfulness. Mindfulness is a word that gets tossed around very, very much, just like innovation nowadays. But I fundamentally believe this is a human skill that we have to teach everyone, because it is at the heart of agency. It's at the heart of teaching you, where is my mind wandering? Am I at the whim of a machine that's figured out how to nudge me and manipulate me to do something? Can I take myself out of that whim? Can I cultivate my agency? Can I understand my interconnectedness and relationship to myself and everybody else and all living beings, and so on? So mindfulness is about, I like the French terminology, it's pleine conscience. It means full conscience. It's not about sort of like this beautiful, no, it's about cultivating full conscience. So that's the introspect. And the ingenuity is about understanding how to innovate in this moment, what it requires from an inner and outer system. And the imagination piece is about that too. It's about making sure that you know how to mobilize people in making that imagination happen.
Without imagination, there is no science, as Einstein said once.
There isn't. Yeah.
Imagination is the essential part of being a human, I believe. And this is
Yeah.
what we are missing right now.
100%. And we could talk about, the fact that we have DALL-E and Midjourney and all these things that help us imagine. I will tell you this. I had this experience the other day, and it kind of brought up a huge question for me. So, two things. art isn't the only idea of imagination, right? You and I both can understand that, right? It's not art. When we talk about imagination, we're not just talking about sort of creating something. We're talking about every act of creativity, which includes relational imagination. Imagination also requires us to turn inwards and to think about what is within us that is important and valid that we want to bring to the outside. So much of our content right now comes from the outside in, and we're not listening inwards. So that's the other critical piece. And the third critical thing I will tell you is in terms of DALL-E and Midjourney, I did this work with a company recently where we were talking about the future of work. And I said, look, the future of work includes AI and chatbots and Midjourney. Why don't we use them as a way to help you think through what are your tenets for the future of work? How are you, company X, going to move in this moment with ethical consideration towards the people that are going to be displaced in your business? And we're going to come up with the first of the world principles of what the future of work looks like. And this board, this executive leadership team started working really, really well, very, very loud. Everybody started talking to each other. The minute I brought the machines out, the ChatGPT, and they started working with it, everything got quiet. And they just started prompting the ChatGPT on, some ideas. And then they just took what it wrote and put it on the wall. And the thought that I had was, what just happened to ownership there? What just happened to ownership? So the more that we use the machines, do we feel less ownership over what is being created? And if we feel less ownership, how likely is it going to be that we're going to stand up against all the challenges of creating it if we don't have that ownership? So I think that's another layer of questions that we haven't even scratched. Like, how do we preserve human ownership of what we create with the machine? Who owns
And what amazes me, the point that you are making right now, is that no matter how accomplished a scientist or a politician or an artist you may be in life, if you're going to put a new idea out there, everybody is going to judge you, everybody is going to oppose you, everybody is going to have a different perspective. Well, when Einstein published his theory of relativity, the 40 most accomplished physicists of Germany published a book saying 40 professors against the general theory of relativity was the title. And it was the general theory of relativity because this was a new idea. While when the machine is creating an output to our probe, we do not judge it. We take it for granted that this is the truth. And this amazes me. We are ready to judge no matter who the name of the human being, but when it comes from the machine, we take it for granted. And we know right now that it is creating factual errors, misrepresentations of reality. It is not yet an accomplished artificial intelligence. It is in the process of being made so, but right now it has a lot of factual errors.
Absolutely.
And yet we take it for granted. This amazes me.
We've ennobled the machine and we've debased the human.
Exactly.
And it's a bias that is well studied. What I will say underneath that question is, how have we become so cruel to each other? Why is that the sort of
dehumanization,
the currency that's going on? And I really believe that part of the cruelty exists in this disconnection, the fundamental disconnection that's happened. So part of mindfulness is understanding how we're infinitely connected. So for example, Alexandros, let's make it really real. How is it that you and I are both speaking English right now? You could say, well, my parents taught me the language or learned it at school. Okay, great. How did your school teachers teach you and how did they learn? How did your parents learn? And then you start unfolding this question, you realize, well, I learned it because, there's books that have been written in this language, because there's people outside that I heard speaking this language, because, historically, English evolved from other languages, right? There's a lot of Germanic in English. So now all of a sudden you can touch the history of civilization in that. But then you can say, well, the reason why you and I speak English also exists in the fact that there's air. Because without air, I can't send you the vibrations of my voice. So now all of a sudden we realize the only reason why we're able to speak is because we are connected to the ecology of this place, right? And you and I, of course, are connecting over this video. The only reason why you and I can speak like this is because there's been an infinite growth of technological evolution that contributes to this. So we have to thank everything and everyone that existed beforehand. And the fact that the monitor is made out of natural resources and minerals, right? I have to now think of all the ways that the planet has evolved in order to make these minerals. And now I start thinking, well, where do minerals come from? They come from other entities in the cosmos, right? So just the fact that you and I speak English, if you really examine it, it's a window into how everything is interconnected, all the way in the past of human history, all the way in the ecological past, all the way across our oceans. There's no disconnection. But we live in a world where we think that we are disconnected. It's ultimately a modern version of the Fermi paradox, where we think, the Fermi paradox was the Earth.
Where is everything? Where is everybody?
The Earth is in the middle of the universe. Quite contrary, the Earth spins around the sun, which is somewhere in the universe and in an unnamed place, an unknown place. So we have this Fermi paradox of humanity. Like, we think we're individuals, everything spins around me, we're disconnected, and we need to completely re-understand that we are part of everything. Once we understand that cruelty that exists between us disappears. Because I can't be cruel to you, because if I'm cruel to you, I'm being cruel to me.
So the humanity actually exists in the space between.
It's in the relational space. It's in the
But this is actually the way it works, the way the world is working. Everything is in the space between. Well, we feel our bodies as solid, and as we also feel the planets are solid. We see them, we understand them. But, well, our bodies is consistent of about 97% of pure air.
Yeah.
Which is amazing if you think about it. The matter subject of our bodies is less than 3%. But it's about the strong forces and weak forces of the quantum level that makes the whole miracle of life emerge, as it makes the planets emerge, as it makes the minerals emerge.
Less as an agent and more of a steward. Do you see? For me, that is the major concept change that happens, because you think of yourself as less, and there's an I in here that's acting out of my own will. Instead of, like, there is a collection of elements somehow that I am shepherding and stewarding, and in relation with all of these other elements. And how do I steward that? It goes back to why human intelligence is so important: wisdom, ethics, and prudence. How do I steward that into the future? Because I recognize there's no I. There's an
I agree. This is the very basis of really introspecting yourself, or of knowing thyself, that the ancient Greeks were saying, which takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of personal investment.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I don't feel that all these information technologies leaves us the space to really introspect, because we are keep getting probed from the machine through a massive information overflow that our biological infrastructure cannot really handle. So our limbic systems are hijacked 24/7. We have this adrenaline and dopamine kicking in the brain, or cortisol, according to the message that we are getting, according to the echo chamber within we participate.
Yeah.
And being able to escape the echo chambers, being able to control the information overflow, needs a lot of personal investment. not a lot of people have the ability and the possibility of doing so. So I believe that the states and international community institution should invest in what you are saying, in our humanity. But I don't see that happening. This is why actually I created this podcast, to keep probing the institutions and the political order to start addressing important questions.
That's why I said, at the end of the day, do all these outside change forces and models and ideas work? No. The only thing that I have found works is this inner work for outer change, like the inner work. And why I said we need to reinvest in human intelligence, just not only reinvest, but invest in coterminous amounts as AI. And why I think mindfulness is super important right now, not because it's a peace area, but because it starts shaping this more coalesced and wise and correct worldview that we are interconnected, and helps you act out of intention as opposed to out of reaction. So if we are continually being challenged in a limbic system and AI is constantly leading to lower and lower order of human function, what are we doing to enhance the order of human function? And we need to enhance it, and we're not. So that's the goal for the work that I'm doing with Hello Humanity, at least.
Excellent. Let me take you to doom.
Okay.
If you would put a number to the possibility of doom from AI, existential AI, is AI an existential threat? And where would you put this number to be?
So define doom.
Doom. AI becoming super intelligent, surpassing the human factor, surpassing humanity in intelligence, and start recognizing humanity as a different species with which it antagonizes for the cosmos, for the national resources, for energy. So it actually puts itself against us.
Okay.
And start destroying humanity.
So that's one level of doom, that's existential doom. But I think there's another level of doom, which is when do we lose our agency completely and become just numb and participant to this machine? The answer to both of those questions is unless we reinvest in what I've been talking about, it's almost 100%. Because the incentives are there, the multipolar traps are there, the Moloch trap is there, right? We are incentivized to unleash these machines, and we're not doing it with a lot of guardrails. And we are already seeing, like, I'm sure you've seen it, there's coded bias, there's misinformation, there's all this stuff that's happening that is really messing with our sense of reality and our sense of self. And I don't know that there's a way back unless we really challenge this idea of what we mean by the future of civilization. It can't be driven by economic incentives. It has to be driven by humane incentives. So it's almost 100% unless we reinvest, is my answer.
Excellent. Caroline, I know that our time is passing, but let me put you a last question. You are very optimist. You work with big organizations, you work with institutions, you work with young people. What is the essence that you are getting as a feedback from the people that you are working with? And what is your expectation about the next 5 years? Because right now we are in a point in time that we cannot really project far into the future. We need to cultivate our imagination. We need to start creating different scenarios, but all those are needs. They are not realities. What is your essence?
So what I'm seeing is a lot of well-intended people wanting to do the right thing, trapped in a system that forces them to do the wrong thing. So we have to challenge the system, and that requires creating, like I told
This
you,
zero-sum mindset.
it's not a mindset, it's a system that
It's a
forces us.
game.
It's yeah, we're in this trap. We're in a trap. So what it requires is people like you and me, and anyone who's on the fringe who understands the actual implications of AI, this right understanding that I'm talking about, to come together, because there's strength in community, there's strength in knowing that you're not the only outsider thinking this way, and because that strength leads to courage. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing is we need to start engineering some tipping points, some keystone changes that will sort of unfold all the possibility. And then your question about what will the next 5 years be like? I will say this moment is excellent. I don't know if I know that there's a lot of doomerism out there, but if you think of change theory, this middle that's super messy is the most generative moment. So what we need to do is coalesce as people who really see this larger possibility of vision, and use this messiness because it rearranges everything, and design it anew. So I actually lean into the messiness. I don't see it as a doomsday scenario. It's very messy, very complex, very challenging. But if you just put your ear to the wall, you can see everybody's starting to think about it. Like 5 years ago, I was just telling one of my clients, 5 years ago, I would not have been able to come into a conference. I'm speaking in June, coming into conference on all Fortune 100 companies, about 500 of them in the room, and say the number one skill that we need for leadership is moral imagination, and we need to do inner work for outer change. 5 years ago, that would have been heresy. It would have been like wild and crazy. Today, there is an understanding and acceptance that actually that's maybe what we need to do, right? So 5 years from now, what I'm hoping for is that we will have really soaked up this messiness, like really like kissed it, and been like, this is the most fertile moment for growth, for change, for system changes, like shake it all up. And we will have experiments, little pockets of experiments of this could be, this could be, this could be, this could be. And in that experimentation, learning what actually works for us, and learning what we care about, what we mean, what we really want. And we need people who are well grounded to do that work. So hopefully we will have invested in this grounding, this human intelligence that I'm talking about, so that that work has the biggest possibility.
Caroline, thank you very much for being at the History of the Metacrisis. All the best for your work at Hello Humanity.
Thank you.
Let's have the discussion again in due time.
I would love
really
that.
enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Take good care, Alexandros. Thank you for
You
inviting
too.
me.
Thank you very much for your time. We speak again.
We
Bye.
will. Bye.
So this was my conversation with Caroline Chubb Calderon from Hello Humanity. I hope you enjoyed it, and it was thought-provoking. If you want to stay in touch, please send me your thoughts, your ideas, and your feedback. Subscribe to the channels, to the Patreon and to the YouTube channel, and keep in touch. See you at the next History of the Metacrisis. Bye for now.